At around midnight, Kenyans received a bad news. For them, some call it a breaking news. A news that left millions of them speechless. A hike that has never witnessed in this country since independence. The prices of fuel hike at around almost 250 Kenyan shillings. It forces some of the leaders to come in to give their solution on how Kenyans should now manage the crisis that they are in now. The crisis that some term that it is now worldwide. It is a global issue. But some say that this isn't a global issue. It is the reluctance of Kenya's government. Ndindi Nyoro, the one now we want to break down his interpretation and his proposal on how Kenyans should do so that they can now lower the prices of fuel by 27 Kenyan shilling, not even 10 shilling.
I have 3 proposals based on what we need to do as Kenyans now, without necessarily waiting. I have kept talking about this issue for the last 1 month because this was not an emergency that happened to Kenya. We have always known from the 28th of February that we'll need to think and do something about the fuel crisis. The fact that we had to postpone offering solutions up to yesterday evening, almost at midnight, just shows how casually the government has been taking this matter. So, as I talk about these 3 proposals, I request those who are concerned. This is not the time to chest dump and show Kenyans who knows what more than who. It is the time to present credible solutions to the issue that is the Kenyans are grappling with today.
And before we begin that interpretation of Ndindi Nyoro, in case this is your first time coming across us, kindly please take a minute or two, click that subscribe button, then allow the notification buttons to be on. Whenever we shall be producing a video like this one, YouTube will automatically giving you a notification. The proposal number 1, Ndindi Nyoro is clear that for the prices of this fuel to go little bit lower, they need to do what? To reduce the VAT that they added on this fuel. Immediately, this regime took over the power. In fact, he was among them. Let's listen to his solution.
The number 1 proposal that I have, and wholesomely, the practical proposal we have can reduce fuel prices by 27 shillings today without hurting anyone. One is that we need to reduce our VAT by an extra 5% now. And that extra VAT of 5% will mean that our fuel prices will go down by, on that segment alone, by around 8 shillings.
And again, the proposal number 2 is to degazette the fuel levy that was added in 2024. After degazetting of this fuel levy, it will lower the fuel price by certain amount.
The second proposal is that we need to degazette the 7 shillings that was added on fuel levy in the year 2024. It was done through a gazette notice by the Minister for Transport. The same way, he needs to give a gazette notice today before the close of today. That will also bring down the fuel prices by an extra 7 shillings. The other thing,
proposal number 3 is now what we call as fuel stabilization fund. And fuel stabilization fund, these are funds that are paid by Kenyans, or rather with Kenyans at the pump. So Ndindi is saying that for all amount that they have collected from pockets of Kenyans at the pump, let them try and only give Kenyans 4 billion as a service deal so that Kenyans cannot suffer when they had already set this fuel stabilization funds that can at least help them.
The other thing that we must do is that the fuel stabilization fund has close to 20 billion Kenya shillings as we talk. And this is not money that has been budgeted for. This is money that Kenyans pay in the pump. As you go to fuel your car, it is the Kenyans who have been funding the fuel stabilization fund. And my proposal is that we need to provide an extra 5 billion shillings from the fuel stabilization fund. And with a consumption of around 400 million liters of diesel and petrol per month, it means that will amount to around 12 shillings per liter. Adding those three elements, specifically reducing VAT by an extra 5%, that gives an extra reprieve of around 8 shillings, reducing fuel levy by around 7 shillings, and also offering an additional subsidy of 5 billion shillings from fuel stabilization fund. That also means around 12 shillings per liter. Wholesomely, we can be able to reduce the prices of fuel today by 27 shillings. And what that is likely to do is that we are going to arrest the very many spiraling effects that will happen starting today out of the reckless decision that was made by government yesterday.
Even though the leaders are greedy and want to make more and more of profit out of this, Ndindi is clear that let them return everything where it was at the moment they took over the power. In short, it's trying to argue that let them put where Uhuru Kenyatta left. And when everything is where Uhuru Kenyatta left, things will be little bit cheaper compared to what we are witnessing today.
And Kenyans need to realize this. The proposals I have given, I'm not even requesting the government to do anything. Kenyans are just saying, take back the levies and taxes where you got them. That's what the people of Kenya are saying. The additional 8% VAT was added by this regime in 2023. The additional 7 shillings in fuel levy was added by this regime in the year 2024. The money that is coming from fuel stabilization fund. It is not money that they have generated. It is money that has been contributed by the Kenyan people in the last several months. So what we are asking is simple. Just take the levies and taxes where you got them. And if that happens, Kenyans are not going to pay more in the pump as it happened yesterday. So Kenyans are not requesting the government to do anything. They are just demanding that the government takes the taxation and levies to the level they got them. If they only do that, there is reprieve in the pump as the starting point. Then after doing that, in the medium term, we should now be looking at how to tax exempt the fuel products. We at least take our VAT to zero in the intermediate period. Because the issue we are dealing with is not long term. How we saw even during the Russia and Ukraine issue is that this issue doesn't take too long. There is already solutions being floated globally. And therefore, we may push this cost to the Kenyan people, then we end up hurting our economy for the rest of the year.
Despite the fact that this crisis is eating up in global or rather worldwide, this is not the first time such a crisis is happening. Ndindi tried to compare the figures in 2022. That in 2022, prices per barrel at that time then, it was $115. And from that time, the fuel prices was ranging around 140 to 160 Kenyan shilling. Why is it that now this regime, the barrel of the same cost of fuel is now ranging at $98 and they are selling at a very higher price of 200 Kenyan shilling? What is the problem?
Kenyans must be aware of. Just look at your data and you'll see that global oil prices were at a higher price in the year 2022 than they are now. Actually, in May of 2022, a barrel of oil topped around $115 per barrel. It is definitely higher than the $98 per barrel it is trading today. But fuel prices never exceeded 160 shillings for petrol and around 140 shillings for diesel. So this is simple arithmetic. The global oil prices were higher in 2022 at around $115 per barrel. But the highest Kenyans were paying was around 160 shillings for petrol and 140 shillings for diesel. What an oxymoron then there is, that the global oil prices are now around $98 per barrel, but Kenyans are paying upwards of 200 shillings. That is a paradox by itself. And even when we compare the regional prices, and especially Kenya being a home of a port, and Kenya having mechanisms like fuel stabilization fund, which is funded by Kenyans, it is not explainable logically how any of our neighbors should be selling fuel cheaper than Kenya. That is a paradox by itself.
Now, the elephant in the room that we need to digest it slowly and also get to understand it deeply is something that we normally call it G to G, government to government. Ndindi is terming this a scam, that this is not just government to government deal of fuel importation. This is just small companies in Kenya where its leader are now the officials in this the so-called regime, or rather the government, that are using that G2G deal to do what? To exploit Kenyans.
This scam called G2G. G2G is a scandal, it is a scam, and it is a business for senior government officials in Kenya. G2G, there is nothing government to government. Saudi Aramco is government in their area. And also the companies in the UAE are owned by government in those countries. But the other G that should represent the government of Kenya, Kenyans should know that there is no government there. These are self-interested, greedy leaders who are profiteering from G2G as Kenyans brace themselves with the pain at the pump. G2G, I want to repeat, is a kiosk. It is a business enterprise. It is a profit machine for senior government leaders in Kenya. And the companies that handle 75% of G2G volumes, the ultimate beneficial owners of these companies are the same people who added fuel prices yesterday. That for them, they would rather make profits from their G2G arrangements and illegal businesses, but Kenyans to shoulder the burden and the cry.
And when this G2G program was coming in, remember in 2023, there around in December, the late Raila Amolo Odinga was against it. And Raila was clear that these people are signing with the companies of Emirates, Arab Emirates. They are not G2G.
In my estimation, in the next couple of months, the exchange rate will come below Kenya shillings 120, maybe 115, you never know, unquote. 5 facts are undeniable. 1, there was no G2G. Kenya government did not sign any contract with Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates. Only the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum signed a deal with the state-owned petroleum companies in the Middle East. Why Ruto chose to characterize the deal as a G2G is the first red flag that points to mischief in this deal. We now know that the characterization of this deal as a G2G was meant to shield the three Kenyan companies from paying the 30% corporate tax. I will return to this matter later. 2. The shilling has continued to fall against the dollar. The cost of oil has not come down since the deal was signed. 4. The scarcity of the dollar has continued. 5. The landlocked countries that depend on us for oil are abandoning our pipeline because it has become too expensive. In other words, the deal has not addressed any of the problems Ruto said it would. When Ruto initiated this deal, the US dollar to the Kenya shilling exchange rate was 132. Today, 6 months later, it is Kenya shillings 159 to the dollar. The cost of fuel shot up significantly after the deal. Why have things moved from bad to worse since the deal was signed? Well, the deal was a scam for which we now demand full disclosure and full accountability.
But what happened? During the protest of Gen Z in 2024, the same opposition that was led by Raila Amolo Odinga by that time then, they now joined the government, and immediately they joined the government, they also signed this deal, and one of their companies, or rather their companies, also were in this program of G2G.
G2G, for avoidance of doubt, is a scandal. And the people who you see there purporting they are the owners of those companies are not. The second thing is that we have now also negotiated through the pain of Kenyans our political dealings. The G2G companies that were there previously belong to the original owners of government, the original one. Now, even those who joined, part of the negotiation that was there after the protest of 2024, that instead of addressing the issues Kenyans raised, leaders sat down to cut deals, and a few companies were introduced into G2G. One of them, you have seen it in today's newspapers on front page. That as Kenyans, we are talking about lowering taxes and lowering the cost of living. Leaders sat down in dark rooms and instead cut deals on introducing companies belonging to the then opposition. For them to be silenced, Kenyans had to pay the price. So, my friends in government, Kenyans will not continue to shoulder the burden of your greed through the dealings of G2G. That as they bear the pain in the pump, you are celebrating the profits. That will not continue to happen in Kenya anymore.
They are not just exploiting Kenyans, but also the resources of Kenyans. In Turkana, we have some small oil there, but that oil is not helping the people of Turkana. That oil is not even karibu with to change the life of the Turkanian there. But this oil that is now wanazitoa pale Turkana is now benefiting some small elite in government by the so-called that dealing with G2G program.
The most unfortunate bit is that they have now extended that grid from now downstream to midstream to all the levels of fuel production in Kenya. That the same cabal in government who are profiteering from G2G, they have now taken Kenyans' resources in Turkana. That the oil in Turkana does no longer belong to Kenyans. It now belongs to greedy leaders. The same people profiteering from G2G, they have now stolen the Kenyan fuel and oil in Turkana. They are now exploring it and exploiting it for their own personal benefit. It is a big shame. And Kenyans cannot continue to be led in this kind of profligate and unabashed and uncontrolled greed.
Until there, we all call for the Kenyans to understand the kind of the leaders they have, the kinds of the leaders they elected in office. These people are not there to represent anybody. These people are busy making or rather doing businesses on your expenses. And these things led Ndindi Nyoro almost to cry. Enough is enough.
Na viongozi wako serikalini ndio wenye kampuni za G2G. Ati wao sasa wanahesabu faida, Wakenya wakilia wakiweka mafuta. The leaders of Kenya, you should be ashamed of yourselves that you are buying money printing machines ya kuhesabu faida yenu ya G2G wakati wa Kenya wanalia wakiweka bei ya wakiweka mafuta na bei ya juu. It is a shame, na ya kuonyesha ya kwamba wakora tu wenye wako katika G2G wanapata faida wa Kenya wakilia. Sasa wameenda Turukana, wameiba mafuta ya Wakenya ya Turukana, sasa ni yao binafsi. How much is enough? How much is enough? Kwani mwanaume moja tupu inatoshana nini ukule kila kitu hii dunia? G2G unakula faida wa Kenya wakilia. Mafuta ya Turukana, instead ya isaidia watu wa Turukana, umechukua umeiba ni yako. How much is enough for one man?
What do you take on it? To give a solution like what Ndindi Nyoro has given is the best way for us to go. But to call for a protest, that what I'm witnessing or rather I'm listening from the opposition side, that will not help. Let's try for once to speak one language. I think now you understand where all this messy is coming. It's not because of Siju, the war was there, Siju, Iran, or nothing. It's just about the greedy of the leaders that we elected. If you compare the prices in the region, why is it that the Kenya alone, it increases its fuel in that large amount? Later on, then the president reduced it. What is your thought, guys, on it? Drop it in comment section. I'll be doing my best to read it and giving you a response. And to that, guys, peace and love.
And with that, guys, thank you for choosing Kenya Political Brief as our primary news platform, more so on politics. Kindly please share this video to a friend. If politics is your passion, this is the place you really wish to be. Kindly subscribe. Bye bye.